It wasn't the heart attack that almost killed me. It was seeing my daughter-in-law crying beside my bed and hearing her say, with that funeral mass voice she only uses when she's winning, "Poor Evelyn, my son changed her pills by accident." There, among tubes, oxygen, and a constant beeping, I knew that if I walked out of that room alive, I was going to have to get ready for a war. See, I'm not the dramatic type. At my age, drama gives you wrinkles that not even surgery can fix. But that morning, the floor of my kitchen turned into an ice rink, and the blue bottle, my medication, the one I've been taking for years, rolled under the fridge like it wanted to hide from the crime. I went down flat, half conscious, my ears full of echoes and that metallic smell that fear has. I remember my grandson Ethan's voice shouting, "Grandma," and my daughter-in-law Monica's voice, theatrical, almost rehearsed. "Told you, Mark. I told you. She's getting worse. She can't tell the boxes apart anymore." And there she was, kneeling beside my body, holding my hand with the delicacy of a supporting actress, faking concern while weighing every word to sound innocent. I couldn't speak, but I could think. And when a woman my age thinks in silence, half the world should be trembling. They loaded me into the ambulance, and she came in the back, holding my purse like it was hers. In the ER, the Dr. Harper, a woman with the kind of exhaustion you only get from hearing lies every day, checked my pills, looked at my lab results, and said, "That's strange. The dosage doesn't match the prescription." And then Mark, my son, showed up with a face like a sad Sunday. "Mom, what did you do this time?" What I always do, I wanted to tell him, "Survive your choices." But no sound came out. Monica stepped forward with a confidence that froze my blood. "Doctor, we think it was Ethan. He's really nervous about his exams and, well, he must have mixed up the bottles. Please don't say anything to him. He's a good boy." And Ethan, poor thing, in the corner, head down, not fully understanding what was going on. I saw him biting his lips, his hands shaking. It wasn't guilt, it was fear. The doctor looked at me with a mix of doubt and respect. She kept me for observation and said she wanted to repeat the tests. Monica took the chance to deliver her master stroke. "Look, doctor, I know Evelyn is independent, but lately she's not well. She forgets things, confuses days, talks to herself. Maybe we should think about something more stable. A care home, perhaps. Care home." The word floated in the air like a mosquito that won't let you sleep. The doctor didn't answer. She just wrote something in my file, but I saw her hesitate, and that hesitation was exactly what Monica needed. Later, when the doctors left, she came closer and took my hand. Her tone changed. Sweet, but sharp. "Don't worry, Evelyn. You'll see. Everything will work out. You just have to let us help you." Help. What a comfortable verb for people who want control. Hours later, when the monitors stopped sounding like a death clock, they discharged me. And there was Monica, insistent, offering her car, her help, her funeral smile with expensive lipstick. I accepted the ride, but not her kindness. I don't trust people who touch you too much when you're weak. Back home, everything smelled different. The kitchen was spotless, the medicine cabinet organized, the towels folded like in a hotel. Monica had been here before, that was obvious. "I cleaned a bit, Evelyn. You know, for your own good," she said. And that, "for your own good," sounded like a property stamp. Ethan was sitting on the sofa, elbows on his knees, head down. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I think it was me." His voice trembled. I grabbed a box and left it somewhere else. "I didn't mean to." "It's okay, dear. It's okay," I cut him off. "Don't worry. We all make mistakes." But inside, my mind was doing the math. How could he get confused if each bottle had a different label written in black marker? I got up carefully, pretending to be dizzy, and went to the bathroom. I opened the medicine cabinet. The blue bottle was there, apparently untouched. But the seal, that thin, transparent plastic you break the first time you open it, had been lifted with surgical precision, as if someone had opened it with a needle and then closed it again. Whoever that was knew exactly what they were doing. I went back to the kitchen and found her making tea. "Something warm will do you good, Evelyn," she said without looking at me. It'll help you relax. Thank you, I replied, sitting across from her. I relax more when I know who goes into my bathroom, but tea helps too. The cup shook in her hands for just a second. Not enough to give herself away, but enough to confirm I had touched a nerve. I drank the tea slowly, without taking my eyes off her. And I thought, I'm not some senile old woman. I'm a woman who's lived too much not to smell danger. And that day, danger smelled like expensive perfume and cheap lies. Ethan came over and hugged me. I felt him sincere, confused. He was the perfect alibi, the distracted grandson, the kid who mixes things up. But he wasn't the villain of this story, not yet. Before I go on with my story, I'm really curious to know from where in the world and at what time you're joining me today. I'd love to read you in the comments. Because if I learned anything in this life, it's that truths hold better when someone listens to them. Going back to that moment, I remember it with brutal clarity. The empty cup, the blue bottle in the bathroom, and Monica closing my front door with the same smile other people use to close coffins. That afternoon, while the sun slipped through the blinds, I swore in silence that I would never stay still again. If they wanted to erase me, they were going to have to work for it. And that's how, without knowing it, it all began. The game, the lies, the investigation, and the beginning of the end of a family that looked perfect from the outside. That night the whole house was breathing strangely, as if the furniture itself were suspicious. I stayed in the armchair pretending to watch TV, but really I was looking at the reflection of the hallway in the black screen, that dark mirror where sometimes truths slip in that your eyes don't dare look at directly. Ethan had gone upstairs to his room. I heard him pacing back and forth like a trapped cat. Monica had insisted on staying a bit longer. To give you peace of mind, she said, although I've always been more afraid of peace than of scandal. She made a soft noise in the kitchen, opening and closing drawers. I got up slowly, making sure my sandals didn't squeak, and from the doorway I saw her lining up my cups as if she were setting up a little funeral display for me. She had that mechanical gesture of someone who feels like the owner, not a guest. Do you know what's going on, Evelyn? She said suddenly, without turning around. You don't take care of yourself enough. I come over and find the gas left on, the lights burning. It's normal that you worry about nothing. You're overwhelmed. Yes, I answered with a voice I didn't recognize. Overwhelmed. That's what I am. The next morning, with light coming in through the lace curtains, my son Mark arrived early. He had that face of someone who hasn't slept but pretends everything's fine. I've been thinking you could come stay with us for a few days, Mom. Monica has time off and can help you. I laughed, and he got offended. Don't take it that way. We just want what's best for you. What's best for me would be for you to stop talking about me like I'm already dead, son, I told him. And the sentence fell between us like a stone. Monica appeared right then, flawless, with that perfume that always smells like the end of the month. She brought a bag of fruit, left it on the counter, smiled. I brought you some bananas, for the potassium. You can't keep going with so much salt, Evelyn. I looked at her and knew that every kind gesture was a new nail in the coffin she was building for me. After they left, the silence got heavy. Ethan came downstairs with fresh dark circles, dropped into the chair in front of me. Grandma, you believe me, right? He asked. And that, you believe me? Sounded more like a plea than a question. Of course I believe you, even though I don't know exactly about what. That I didn't want to hurt you. Mom said. He stopped, she said. You get confused and sometimes switch the boxes. I just tried to help. Help me, of course. Everyone wants to help me. I watched him rub his hands, that gesture boys have when they feel the world slipping away from them. I wanted to hug him, but something told me not to yet. I still didn't know if he was part of the plan or just a pawn. In the afternoon, Julia, my neighbor, dropped by, unannounced. She always comes knocking on the door with her knuckles and saying, I'm coming in, okay? As if that excused the intrusion. She brought a thermos of coffee and a mischievous sparkle in her eyes. I noticed you were off yesterday, Evelyn. What's wrong? I told her just enough. The dizzy spell, the hospital, the supposed mistake. She looked at me like you look at a neighbor who's just said she's seen a ghost. There's no mistake. There are sticky fingers, she said, pouring sugar in her coffee. I've seen worse in this building. Let me tell you one thing. Nobody opens a bottle like that by accident. Her certainty cut right through me. So what do? I asked. Do what I do. Put eyes where no one expects them. I've got a nephew who installs cameras. They're cheap, tiny. If someone touches what they shouldn't, you'll know. Julia talked while stirring her coffee, as if she were discussing a cake recipe, not a domestic trap. Her proposal scared me and, at the same time, sparked something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. That night, I stayed on the sofa with an old notebook, writing things down. At my age, writing is a way to breathe quietly. I wrote times, gestures, details, who comes in, who goes out, when drawers are opened. I felt like a detective in slippers. Ethan walked by behind me and stopped for a second. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Nothing," I lied, writing down what I have left to do before I forget. He smiled without understanding and kept going. Later, the phone rang and my heart clenched before I picked up. Unknown number. Evelyn Brooks? It was a woman's voice, firm. "Yes, speaking. I'm calling from the clinic. We need you to repeat a blood test. There was an error with yesterday's samples." That error froze me again. What kind of error? "Just a mix-up, don't worry." I hung up and knew nothing in my life was a mix-up. The mistakes were piling up with suspicious perfection. Julia came back the next day with a conspiratorial smile. "My nephew says he can come by tomorrow. He won't even take an hour. I don't know if I want cameras in my house, Julia. They're not to spy on you, Evelyn. They're to give you peace of mind. Not the same thing." I stared at the blue bottle on the shelf. I picked it up, held it to the light. For a second, I thought I saw something different in the color of the powder, a slightly duller tone. I put it back, but the idea had already sunk in. Sometimes war starts like that, with a tiny gesture only you notice. Before I wrap up for today, because I know some of you stay listening until the very end, I want to ask you a question. From what part of the world and at what time are you here with me? I'd love to read you in the 4 video comments to know who's on the other side while I tell this. Because sometimes the only thing that keeps the truth standing is that someone hears it. That afternoon, just when I thought nothing could unsettle me more, I heard Ethan talking on the phone from his room. The door was half open, his voice low, nervous. "I told you I already did it. It's done. Don't call me here." I froze in the hallway, breathing slowly so the floorboards wouldn't creak. Then I knew. My grandson wasn't the culprit, but he wasn't entirely innocent either. And if I wanted to save him, I'd have to start moving my own pieces. The TV was still off, reflecting our silhouettes, him locked inside his guilt and me trapped inside my lucidity. Outside, the wind shook the curtains, and it felt like the house was finally holding its breath with me. The next morning dawned with a different kind of silence. Not the peaceful one that invites coffee, but a tense one, as if the walls knew something was about to happen. Julia arrived early, shuffling her feet and carrying a thermos under her arm, and behind her came the nephew she'd told me about, a skinny guy with insomniac dark circles and a smile that smelled like newly minted trust. His name was Ryan. He walked in looking around with curiosity, like my flat was a museum of living antiques. "Where do you want the cameras, Mrs. Evelyn?" he asked, straight to the point. "In the places where I don't have eyes," I answered, and he laughed, not understanding that it wasn't a joke. While he installed the little devices, Julia cracked jokes to cover the tension, but each click of the screws sounded to me like the start of something irreversible. I'm not the spying type, never was, but you learn that when they want to erase you, you have to learn to leave evidence. Ryan finished in less than an hour, wiped his hands, and showed me how to watch the recordings. "Only you have the password," he said. I paid him in cash, and he left a smell of metal and hope hanging in the air. Julia stayed a while longer, drinking coffee at the dining table. "Don't get nervous if you don't see anything, Evelyn," she told me. "Most of the time, what happens in secret takes a while to show itself." I nodded. though inside I felt that very night something was going to move. Ethan came downstairs around 11, hair messy and eyes swollen. "I didn't sleep," he said. "I have to study, but I can't focus." I put a plate of toast in front of him and stroked his shoulder. "Eat first, then think. No one thinks straight on an empty stomach." He looked at me with that mix of shame and affection grandsons have when they know grandma has figured out more than they'd like. At midday, the bell rang. It was Mark. He'd come alone, without Monica, and that already said a lot. He walked in awkwardly, like he didn't know where to put his hands. "Mom, we need to talk." I got ready for the show. "We always need to talk, son, but you never tell me anything." He sat down across from me, took a deep breath. "I don't want you to think we're trying to push you out of your home, but Monica says it's really hard for you to be on your own. Monica says a lot of things, some of them even sound true." Mark sighed and looked at me with that inherited guilt men carry when they don't know how to set boundaries. "We only think about what's best for you, Mom, and I think about what's best for me, Mark. Don't worry, we agree on the intention, just not on the method." After he left, I checked the cameras. The screen showed an empty kitchen, a silent hallway, the bathroom door closed. Everything in order. I felt a ridiculous disappointment, as if I'd expected danger to show up immediately. But that night, when the house calmed down and Ethan went up to his room, something changed. I sat in front of the TV, opened the program Ryan had shown me, and fast-forwarded the recording. On the screen, I saw Monica entering my flat with her keys, walking straight to the bathroom without hesitation. She opened the medicine cabinet, looked around, took out the blue bottle, held it for a few seconds out of frame, then put it back with the same care a thief uses to return fake jewels. I stayed still, holding my breath. What I felt wasn't surprise, it was confirmation. Certainty has a bitter taste, but it's easier to digest than doubt. I saved the video onto a flash drive and hid it inside the sugar jar. Then I turned off the screen and sat there a while, watching the dark reflection, the echo of my own face turned into a witness. That same night I called the clinic and booked an appointment with Dr. Harper. I said I needed to talk about my medication. I didn't lie. The next day, the hospital smelled like disinfectant and hurry. The doctor greeted me with that look that mixes professionalism and exhaustion. "Evelyn, I'm glad to see you on your feet. How are you? Feeling?" "In the mood not to fall again," I replied. I sat down, opened my purse, and placed the blue bottle in front of her. "Could you tell me if this is the same thing you prescribed?" She examined it, turned the cap, smelled the contents. "It looks the same, but we'd have to test it to be sure." "Why do you ask?" "Because some things look harmless right up until they kill you," I said, and the doctor raised an eyebrow. She asked me to leave the bottle and had me sign a form. Before I left, she looked me in the eye. "Are you sure someone tampered with it?" "Sure, no. But suspecting in time has saved me more often than believing too late." She gave the faintest smile. "I'll look into this. I'll let you know as soon as I have something." On my way out, I ran into Monica in the hallway. She was holding an envelope and wearing a smile that barely fit on her face. "What are you doing here, Evelyn?" she asked, pretending to be surprised. "Getting myself checked, seeing if the poison suits me." "Oh, don't start with your ideas," she said, lowering her voice. "We all just want you to be calm." "And everyone's trying so hard you're leaving me without air," I shot back, and walked away without looking at her. In the afternoon, Ethan came back from school. His headphones hung around his neck, and his eyes were evasive. "Can we talk?" I asked. "About what?" "About what I heard last night, when you said you'd already done it." He froze, the color draining from his face. "It wasn't anything bad, Grandma. I swear, it was just a bet." "A bet?" "Yeah. I got into an online betting group. I lost money. Mom found out and said if I helped her with something, she'd cover the debt." "And what was that something?" I asked, though I already knew. He dropped his head. "Move your pillboxes, that's all." For a moment, the air turned to stone, not because I hadn't suspected it, but because hearing it from his mouth split me in two. "And now?" I asked quietly. "Now I don't know what to do. Mom says it's best for you to rest and let others handle things, but I know you're handling things yourself. I touched his cheek. Ethan, kids do stupid things sometimes, but mothers know exactly what they're doing. When he went to his room, I sat looking at the closed door, listening to his breathing on the other side. I couldn't hate him. There was a tenderness in his clumsiness and a guilt that felt too familiar. That night, Julia came again. She sat without me inviting her, opened her fan, and stared at me. "Well?" she asked. "I've got her on video. And the grandson?" "The grandson is the weapon that doesn't know it's a weapon." Julia nodded, and we didn't speak for a few minutes. Silence between two old women can be more eloquent than any speech. Before leaving, she said, "Don't rush it, Evelyn. People like that destroy themselves if you give them enough rope." I nodded, but I knew I couldn't just sit still. Some wars you don't choose, but once they declare battle on you, playing dead won't save you. I stayed alone, watching the hallway's reflection in the black TV screen. The echo of the recording replayed in my head. Monica opening the bottle, her precise hands, her absolute calm. I thought that maybe the camera hadn't just caught a crime, but the oldest truth in the world, that sometimes family love is just an elegant form of control. And there, sitting on the sofa, my heart beating slowly, I realized the worst part wasn't what they'd done, but what they were willing to keep doing if I didn't move. The next day, when the ring of the telephone sliced through the kitchen silence, I already knew who it was, Doctor. Harper's voice sounded deeper than usual, with that tone doctors use when they're about to confirm what you already suspect but don't want to hear. She told me the medicine tests had come back odd, that there were traces of a substance that did not belong to my treatment, and that she needed to see me to repeat the samples for safety. She never used the word tampering, but she didn't need to. I heard it, floating between her pauses. I got dressed calmly, put on my navy coat, the one that still smells like ivory soap, and went out. I walked slowly, feeling the dampness of the asphalt after rain, that smell of freshly washed city that fools you a bit, because underneath the shine everything's just as dirty. At the health center, the doctor was waiting with a folder in hand and a gaze more human than professional. She invited me in and, before speaking, closed the door with a softness that unsettled me more than any alarm. "Evelyn," she began, "something doesn't add up. The sample has traces of an anxiolytic that isn't in your prescription. I won't lie to you. Someone must have tampered with those capsules." I didn't fake surprise. I just crossed my legs, rested my hands on my purse, and looked at her like someone listening to news announced by a tired oracle. "And now what?" I asked. "Now I have to write a report, but I need you to stay calm. If you've noticed anything strange at home." She paused, searching for words. "Anyone who might have had access?" "Half my family has access, Doctor," I answered. "But don't worry, I'm taking my own notes." The doctor smiled with a respect that felt sincere. "I'll let you know when I have the final result. And please, don't sign anything without checking with me first." Her last sentence echoed in my head as I walked back home. Don't sign anything. Sometimes, the most important warnings come dressed up as medical advice. When I turned the corner, I saw Mark waiting in the car. He rolled down the window and greeted me with that nervous smile of someone who doesn't know if they're about to be forgiven or interrogated. "I'll drive you, Mom. I don't want you walking alone." I got in without arguing. For the first few minutes, no one spoke. Only the wipers and the distant noise of a tired engine. "Mom," he finally said, "Monica is really worried. She says you're not well." "Must be contagious," I replied. "I feel the same about her." He gave a joyless laugh. "I don't want this to turn into a fight. We just want to help you." "Help me with what?" "With being calm, with not having to worry about everything." "And what if that, Mark, what you're trying to take from me, is the only thing keeping me alive?" I asked without raising my voice, and he had no answer. When we reached the building, Monica was waiting at the entrance with a folder in hand and a rehearsed, worried expression. "Evelyn, I need you to sign this. Bank papers, just routine, so we can help you with payments and shopping." I asked for the document, opened it slowly, and pretended to read. I didn't understand all of it, but I recognized words that smelled like a trap: authorization, representation, full powers. I looked up. "Why does the bank need my signature in your handwriting?" I asked gently. "Don't exaggerate. It's just formalities." "I don't sign formalities I don't understand." "Mom, trust us," Mark said, taking her side. "Son, I trust you so much I haven't changed the locks yet," I answered. Monica tensed. She snapped the folder shut and muttered something about my ingratitude, about how hard it was to take care of someone who wouldn't let herself be cared for. I let her talk until she ran out of air. Later, while I was cooking a stew that smelled like childhood and rebellion, I heard Ethan slip in. I heard him drop his backpack, open the fridge, sigh. I peeked in from the doorway. "Have you eaten yet?" I asked. "At school." "White lie," I said. "No one who's eaten looks at stew with that face." He sat down, started eating without speaking, and when half the plate was gone, he looked up at me with wet eyes. "Did the doctor tell you anything?" "That someone touched my pills." He looked down. "Mom, don't ask me if you already know, Ethan. She says she's doing it for your own good, that you get obsessed, that you need help. And you, what do you say?" "I say I love her, but sometimes I don't recognize her." He stood up, hugged me awkwardly, and went to his room. I stayed there, sniffing the air, trying to tell if what lingered was guilt or redemption. The next morning, Julia brought me an old, dusty folder, the kind that looks like it survived a move and a war. "My husband used this when he fought over his mother's inheritance," she said. "There's a retired lawyer's contact inside, a trustworthy friend. He could advise you." "A lawyer? I don't know if I want to get into trouble, Julia. Trouble already got into you, dear. The only thing you can choose now is what you fight back with." I put the folder in the sideboard drawer, next to the video of the bottle. I was starting to understand that knowing the truth wasn't enough. I had to protect it, wrap it in papers and signatures before they twisted it. That afternoon, as the rain hammered the windows, I decided to test something. I pretended I'd left the gas on. Monica, who had come by to drop off some bags to help with the shopping, noticed right away. "Evelyn, are you trying to kill yourself?" she shouted, turning off the burner. "It was an accident," I said, with an innocence that was getting easier and easier to fake. I saw her look up at the ceiling, frustrated, like her plan was slipping a bit. "We can't go on like this, Evelyn. You're going to end up doing something crazy, or discovering other people's craziness," I replied, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. That night I didn't even turn the cameras on. I didn't need to. The enemy was no longer moving in the shadows, but right in front of me, in broad daylight, repeating empty words while watching my reactions. And in the middle of that game of fake smiles and tense silences, I found myself breathing calmly, like someone who no longer fears the storm because she's learned to read the wind. Something in me had changed. I no longer felt like a victim waiting for the blow, but a hunter preparing the ground. While I stirred the stew still bubbling in the pot, I thought maybe revenge, at a certain age, isn't about rage, but about dignity. And my dignity, the one so many assumed was worn out, had just woken up. That week, the air in the flat got so thick it was hard to swallow. Every sound seemed louder, as if the walls were conspiring to keep anything from going unnoticed. I didn't sleep more than 3 hours in a row, not because fear kept me up, but because my mind wouldn't stop crafting strategies. I'd spent too many years trusting other people's words. Now it was time to learn to disguise my own. Friday dawned with a brash sun, the kind that shows the dirt on the windows and forces you to see what you'd rather ignore. I decided to start playing their game. If they wanted a confused old woman, they'd get one, but only in public. I set the scene carefully, messed up the papers on the table, left the keys in the freezer, put the alarm clock inside the switched-off oven. Julia, when she came by with bread, nearly died laughing. "I didn't know you could act too, Evelyn," she said, lifting the bread like a toast. "You're ready for Netflix." "Sometimes you have to go a little crazy so they'll believe you're sane," I answered. By mid-morning, Monica showed up, as perfect as ever, with that catalog energy that makes you want to scream. She brought a bag of vegetables and a notebook where she kept track of my needs. Evelyn, yesterday you told me you wanted yogurt, and there isn't any. Yesterday? I said, opening my eyes wide. I don't remember. That's what worries me, that you don't remember anymore. Well, at least I remember who shouldn't be here, I muttered under my breath, and she pretended not to hear. She watched me like a doctor examining her experiment. Every time she spotted a wobble in my voice, she smiled, satisfied, like she was confirming a diagnosis. Truth is, in those moments, with the sun bouncing off the window and the smell of coffee filling the kitchen, I felt the floor tremble under a perfectly rehearsed comedy. Soon after, Ethan came down with his headphones hanging from his neck. He greeted us without much enthusiasm and poured himself a bowl of cereal. Monica watched him with that mix of affection and control only ambitious mothers master. Son, you need to go to the bank later, remember. For what? He asked. To drop off some papers. I put them in your backpack. I saw the white envelope peeking out, saw Ethan's nervous gesture. I understood without another word that they were using him again. When Monica left, I called him into the living room and asked him to sit down. Tell me the truth, son. What's in that envelope? I don't know. Grandma, something from the bank. Mom says it's to help you with payments. She's going to help, yes, but not me. Don't make me choose, please, he whispered. I don't want to get more involved. You're already involved, Ethan. The only difference is you can still walk out on your own feet. I looked him in the eyes. He was a boy lost between two worlds, loyalty and fear. And in that moment, I decided to pull him out of one of them. Listen carefully. We're going to make a deal, I said. You're going to keep pretending you're doing what your mother asks. You'll go to the bank with the envelope, but you won't hand it in. You'll bring it back. And when you come back, I'm going to show you something. He nodded without conviction, but he nodded. I watched him leave and felt something shifting in my favor, like a current changing direction after a long fight against it. That afternoon, while I waited, I prepared the house, not physically, emotionally. I mentally closed off each room, remembered where every paper was, every video, every phone number that could help me. And when the clock hit 6, Ethan came back, pale, with the envelope untouched. I didn't hand it in. I couldn't. Good. Now come here. I'm going to show you who your mother is when no one's watching. I turned on the TV and played the camera recording. Monica appeared walking into the bathroom, opening the medicine cabinet, holding the blue bottle like a bomb. Ethan put his hands on his head. God, it can't be. Oh, it can, I said. And it is. So what do we do now? Nothing for now. We wait. Let her keep believing she's in control. We stayed watching the screen in silence, his face twisted, mine coldly calm, my suspicion finally confirmed. You're not going to tell anyone you saw this, understood? I said. Yes, Grandma. And if anyone asks, you play along. Smile. Say you're worried about me, that you don't find me well. That'll throw them off balance. That night we had dinner together in the kitchen, a warm silence between spoonfuls. I thought I saw the beginnings of respect in him, an invisible thread starting to mend. Before going up to his room, he hugged me, awkward like when he was little. Forgive me. You already are, I answered. When he left, I poured myself a glass of wine and looked out the window. The city seemed different. The noise of the cars like a distant backdrop. I thought of Julia, of Dr. Harper, of the lawyer in the folder, of each small alliance forming without the others knowing. Funny how, the more they tried to convince me of my fragility, the stronger I felt. The phone rang shortly after. It was Monica. Evelyn, everything okay? Perfect, better than ever. Ethan's not answering my messages. He's probably studying. You know, he wants to clear his failed subjects. I'm glad to hear you so upbeat. You sound calmer. Calm, yes. Sometimes people calm down right before the change. She didn't answer. I just heard a tense silence before she hung up. I set the receiver down and stayed still, listening to my own pulse. It was the first time in weeks I didn't feel on the defensive. I'd crossed a line and, oddly, on the other side there was no fear, just a kind of serene dignity. I thought about how age teaches you to wait for the right moment to strike, not out of revenge, but so the other person understands they never fully owned you. And as the clock struck midnight, I knew the game was changing, and that, for the first time in a long time, the pieces were moving in my favor. Sunday dawned with deceptively light air, the kind that makes you think things have calmed down when really it's just a silence laying an ambush. Early on, Mark called to say they'd pick me up, that there was a quick bit of paperwork to sort out, nothing serious. The ease in his voice put me on alert. Lying voices don't sound tense. They sound practical. I put on my gray coat, slipped the flash drive with the video into the inside pocket, and went down. The car smelled like expensive perfume and anxiety. Monica was in the front seat, her face lit up with makeup and that smile carved with a knife. On the way, she talked non-stop about traffic, the economy, a neighbor who'd moved to the coast. I listened with that sharp patience you reserve for friendly enemies. Mark drove, staring straight ahead. And in his eyes I thought I saw a mix of shame and relief, like he believed something was finally being handled that he didn't want to face himself. I wondered whether a son's love also ages, or if it just goes lazy. When the car stopped in front of an office building, I understood the quick paperwork wasn't so quick. They took me into an office with beige walls and air conditioning that smelled of fresh fear. A man in a dark suit with hands too soft introduced himself as Lawson. He had that bureaucratic kindness lawyers use when they know the client hasn't read what they're about to sign. He offered me a chair, a pen, and a folder full of words that tried to sound harmless. Mrs. Evelyn, it's just an authorization to make things easier for you. Nothing that can harm you, he said, in a voice so oiled it almost slid off the room. I opened the folder and started reading, line by line, at an exasperating pace. Monica shifted in her chair, impatient. Mark checked his watch. I turned the pages without saying a word, savoring the power of silence. General powers, management of assets, authorization for acts of disposal. Those phrases sounded like a language meant to erase people behind their names. I looked up and fixed my eyes on Lawson. And what if I decide not to sign? I asked, gently. The lawyer smiled, as if he'd rehearsed that question. Nothing changes. You'll just keep handling everything yourself, with more work. I've been doing that for 70 years. I'm not going to break out in an allergy now. I closed the folder slowly and slid it back to him. I need time to read this with my glasses. I don't trust small print. It has a habit of hiding knives. Mark sprang to his feet, babbling something about missing a bank appointment, and took my arm to leave. Monica, behind us, muttered under her breath. No one said a word in the lift. In the car, neither. Only when we parked outside the building did she turn to me with a voice that reminded me of a saleswoman who can't fake kindness anymore. Evelyn, why do you make everything so difficult? We just want to help you. Helping me would be leaving me alone, Monica. But that doesn't suit you, does it? You don't understand anything, she said, her tone no longer sweet. This is for your safety. My safety's just fine. Yours is the one in danger, I answered, without raising my voice. I went up without looking back, my pulse steady, and my mind clear. As soon as the door closed behind me, I exhaled like someone taking off an invisible corset. In the kitchen, Julia was waiting, legs crossed, a cup of tea gone cold in her hand. I figured, she said without preamble. They took you to sign something, didn't they? I nodded. But I didn't sign, thank goodness. At this age, signing without reading is like jumping without checking the ground. She told me her son had called that morning to say he was going to sell the flat she lived in for family reasons. We both laughed, half out of irony, half to keep from crying. Old age, I realized, was a disputed territory, and battles were fought with signatures, diagnoses, and fake smiles. In the afternoon, I called the number inside the folder Julia had given me days earlier. A rough, male voice answered, with the tired tone of someone who's seen too many injustices. Edward Bennett? I asked. That's me. Who's this? An old acquaintance. Evelyn Brooks. We worked together a lifetime ago, back when I still believed justice was more than paperwork. He chuckled on the other end. And what makes you call me now, Evelyn? A suspicion and a video. That already sounds like a story. Come by tomorrow. I'll buy you a coffee. The next morning, I went to his office. A small flat that smelled of paper and old tobacco. Edward still had the same mocking look, though the years had stolen his waistline. I told him everything. The dizzy spell, the blue bottle, Monica, the papers, Ethan, Dr. Harper. He took notes in a steady hand, not interrupting once. They might try to have you declared incompetent, he said at the end. If they get a medical report and a compliant judge, they could control everything. But if you keep that video safe and stay lucid, they've got nothing. So I'm not crazy, just ahead of them. And dangerous, he added with a smile. But that's never been a flaw in you. I left his office with a mix of relief and sadness. Outside, a light drizzle fell, the kind that cleans quietly. I walked without an umbrella, feeling the drops on my face like both a warning and a caress. When I got back home, I saw a car parked in front of the building. Monica's car. She was inside, mobile pressed to her ear. She watched me from the seat, not even pretending otherwise. She didn't get out, didn't speak, just followed me with her eyes. For a second I thought of walking over, but something in her expression told me she was enjoying watching me walk alone in the rain. I smiled to myself and went upstairs without hurrying. Inside the flat, the air smelled of soup and electricity. I put the kettle on, took off my coat, and, while the water boiled, I thought the war had moved into a new phase. It was no longer about discovering the truth, but about withstanding the siege with elegance. Outside, thunder rumbled, and for the first time in a long while, I felt my own noise was louder than the sky's. On Tuesday, the sky was clear, but the air was charged with that pre-disaster electricity, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. I got up early, without an alarm, with that feeling you get when you know something's going to break, but don't know where yet. While I made coffee, I heard the key in the lock, a break-in disguised as a visit. It was Monica, with a tray of pastries and a freshly painted smile. Behind her came Mark, paler than usual, and a few seconds later, Ethan appeared, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes lost. We thought we could have lunch together, like before Monica said, walking in without asking. So we can talk calmly. Calmly? I said, adjusting my robe. That's an optimistic word. They set the table with a care that didn't reassure me at all. It was the kind of care that comes before an ambush. Julia, who had come up to drop off my mail, walked into the scene and froze in the doorway. But Monica invited her in with the fake enthusiasm of someone who can't stand witnesses but doesn't know how to throw them out. Julia, what a surprise! We were just about to serve the lasagna. Stay, there's plenty. I never say no to free lasagna, Julia replied, dropping her bag onto a chair. She gave me a wink that said she wouldn't leave me alone. We all ate together, a parody of a united family. Mark talked about football. Ethan moved his food around without tasting it, and Monica, between bites, dropped phrases that seemed harmless but had an edge. I've been looking into some excellent care homes, she said suddenly. Modern places, with activities, doctors on call, even gardens. How nice, I said. But I should warn you, I don't plan on taking care of anyone. At my age, I've got enough with staying alive. Evelyn, they're not for me, they're for you, she replied, smiling. I'm just gathering information. Julia choked on her lasagna and let out a rough laugh. A care home? But Evelyn's more clear-headed than all of us together. The only one who'd need to be committed from exhaustion is me. The silence that followed was thick, almost solid. Mark looked at Monica, hoping she'd stop, but she kept going. It's not a drastic decision, Julia. It's just precaution. You know she fell the other day, and the bottle thing. I dropped my cutlery and gave her a hard stare. The bottle thing was an accident, remember? A mistake. Yes, of course, she said. But after all that, you're not well, Evelyn. And denying reality doesn't help. Ethan lowered his head, hands clenched. I saw in him the tension of someone who's been swallowing secrets for weeks. Mom, stop it, he muttered. What did you say? I said stop. Monica shot him a look that could cut glass. Don't get involved in this, Ethan. But this is wrong, he insisted. It's not fair what you're doing. And what exactly am I doing? She asked, defiant, her smile sharpening at the scent of betrayal. Ethan stood up, shaking, and pointed toward the kitchen. You messed with Grandma's medicine. The sentence hung in the air like an unexploded bomb. Mark was speechless. Julia raised her brows at me, and Monica froze for a second before bursting into a laugh. Ethan, honey, you're confused. I didn't. I saw you, he insisted, his voice trembling more with courage than fear. I saw you come out of the bathroom and hide something in your purse. That's insane. Not as insane as what you're doing, he answered. Mark tried to intervene, but Monica was already on her feet, red with fury. I won't let you accuse me of something so outrageous. Evelyn, say something. You know I only want to help you. Help me, sure, I said. Like the hunter helps the rabbit, right? I don't understand why everyone's against me. Because you overplayed your hand, Julia cut in. And at this stage, Monica, the clever ones are just boring. The tension snapped all at once. Mark slammed his hand on the table. The plates rattled. Enough, he shouted. We're tearing this family apart. The family was already torn apart, son, I told him, without moving. We're just looking at the pieces now. Monica grabbed her purse without looking at me. If anything happens to you, Evelyn, let it be clear I warned you. Don't blame me later. She stormed out, slamming the door. Mark followed her, calling her name, unable to pick a side. We were left the three of us, Julia, Ethan, and me. The silence Monica left behind was louder than her voice. Are you okay, Grandma? He asked, touching my hand. I'm alive. That's already a victory. Julia lit a cigarette, even though you're not supposed to smoke in there. Next time, record everything she said. Words fade, videos don't. That afternoon, I reviewed the camera footage, went over every second. None of it showed the lunch scene, but I had enough to know the war was no longer underground. It was open now, frontal. Soon after, Dr. Harper called to tell me she'd received a curious request. A mental health report for a court procedure. She didn't say who had asked for it, but her silence said everything. Don't worry, Evelyn. I won't sign anything without talking to you first. Thank you, doctor. Sometimes the greatest relief is simply that someone believes you. I hung up and looked at my reflection in the window. There was no fear, no exhaustion. There was a new light there, a mix of anger and clarity. The storm coming no longer felt like a threat, but like an opportunity. At this age, you learn life is defended with whatever you have left, and I still had words, memory, and a camera that didn't lie. That night there was no sleep, no truce, just the feeling that truth no longer needed to hide. Outside, cars passed like shadows. Inside, the clock pulsed with a plan slowly taking shape. I thought of Monica, of her hollow laugh, of the calm with which she'd open my pill bottles, and I swore the next time our eyes met, she'd be the one feeling watched. Wednesday dawned gray, with that flat light that makes everything more honest, as if the sun refused to take part in the neighborhood's lies. I spent the whole morning pacing the living room, counting my steps between the window and the door, replaying the previous day over and over. Ethan hadn't gone to school, Julia hadn't gone down to the market, and the phone rang only once. Doctor. Harper wanted to see me to check my blood pressure and talk about the report she'd received. The same one that, in her words, describes symptoms you don't have in the slightest. Her tone mixed irony and respect. I understood she not only believed me now, she was ready to put her signature beside mine if needed. I decided it was time to move, not wait. I called Edward, the lawyer, and asked him to prepare a document, something simple, no jargon, but that would leave a record of my will and my mental state. I don't want them saying later that I didn't know what I was doing, I told him. He laughed softly and promised to have it ready that same afternoon. Before leaving, Ethan appeared in the kitchen, his face still puffy from sleep and the leftovers of guilt swirling in his eyes. Where are you going? He asked, like he didn't know we were all watching each other now, with the same mix of affection and suspicion. To take care of my own business, the only thing that still belongs to me, I answered, pouring myself coffee. Can I come with you? No, son, You did enough today by staying quiet when you should have spoken. But you can still do something else. Listen, I told him the doctor had confirmed the pills were tampered with, that the report his mother had filed was a sham, and that I was ready to make everything public if they tried to touch my medicine or my paperwork again. Ethan fell silent, his face stuck somewhere between relief and fear. Mom won't stop, he said. You don't know her when she feels cornered. Then it's about time she gets to know me, because I've got less to lose. Edward's office was a few blocks away. I walked there slowly but steady, enjoying the cool air on my face, that air that reminds you you're still in charge of your lungs. He greeted me with a tired smile and watery coffee. He explained he'd drawn up a notarial document protecting me from any attempt at incapacitation without proper judicial review and stating clearly that I was fully lucid. It's a polite way of saying, "No one bosses me around," he joked, and I nodded, dry. I signed without shaking, with a clarity that surprised even me. I felt each letter of my name like a border they wouldn't be able to cross without breaking the law or decency, and neither of those are things they handle well. When I left the building, the sky was turning a hesitant blue. I crossed the street and ran into Julia, waiting by the newsstand. "I saw you go in," she said. "Tied all the loose ends?" "I still have the biggest knots," I answered. "But this isn't just about me anymore." "About Ethan?" "About all of us," I said, and she understood. Back home, I found my mailbox stuffed with envelopes. Among them, one with the Greenwood Manor Care Home letterhead. Inside there was a brochure and a letter addressed to me, signed by a certain Fletcher. "Your family has booked an informative visit for next Friday. It will be a pleasure to welcome you and show you our facilities." I read the sentence twice, not out of surprise but at how neatly the lie dressed itself in courtesy. I kept the letter and waited. At tea time, Monica showed up as if nothing, with the excuse of bringing sugar-free cookies. "I got your letter," I said as soon as she came in. "What letter?" "The one from Mr. Fletcher. Apparently I already have a room reserved." She froze for a second, then let out a tense laugh. "Oh, Evelyn, don't take it like that. It was just a suggestion, a visit so you can see your options. Nobody's going to force you into anything." "Of course," I said. "Nobody forces anyone. They just push you gently to the edge." I invited her to sit and made coffee for both of us. While I served it, I made sure she could see the notarial envelope on the table, my name written big on it. "What's that?" she asked, pretending not to care. "Nothing much. Just a paper that says I still think, sign, and decide for myself." "Oh, and that tampering with someone else's medication might have legal consequences." Little details. I watched the color drain from her face, but she said nothing. She took a sip, left the cup half full, and stood up. "I've got to go. Mark's waiting. Tell him to stop waiting around. Times have changed." When she left, I watched the coffee steam rise and fade. I didn't feel victory or relief, just a strange calm, a kind of armed peace. I knew Monica wouldn't give up, but I also knew her fear was starting to weigh more than her ambition, and that was already a crack in her armor. That night, Ethan sat with me in front of the TV, though neither of us watched it. He fiddled with his shoelaces, I with my teaspoon. "Grandma," he said suddenly, "if this ends badly, what are you going to do?" "I don't have a plan B, son. I only have my memory, and at my age, that's more dangerous than a weapon. I wish I could help more." "You already helped me by staying." The clock struck 11 when the bell rang. Julia burst in, disheveled and out of breath. "You need to see this," she said, shoving her phone at me. "It's the neighborhood group. Someone leaked a message from Monica asking for references for lawyers specialized in guardianship of elderly people." I handed the phone back, unfazed. "Perfect," I said. "The more she moves, the more noise she makes." Julia looked at me with something like pride. "You've changed, Evelyn." "Yeah, maybe. Old women evolve too." That night, before bed, I wrote a sentence in my notebook. "If they want to erase me, let them try in ink." I always come back in pencil. Then I closed it, left the pen on the table, and turned off the light. I didn't need more proof. The game was on, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was one move ahead. Thursday woke up with a stubborn wind banging the shutters, like the building itself had something to say. I got up early, with that odd energy that comes when adrenaline replaces sleep. I wasn't scared anymore. I'd left fear behind days ago. What I felt now was more like a plan beating inside my present chest. I made coffee and sat at the dining table with my notebook open. I went over names, dates, the little details I'd written down. Monica's visits, the phone calls, the excuses, the documents. All that note-taking that looked like a memory exercise was, in reality, my life jacket. Ethan was still asleep, or pretending to be, and I was grateful for the quiet. At 10 on the dot, I called Edward to ask if he could come with me the next day to the so-called care home visit. I told him about the letter, about Fletcher, about the smell of trap disguised as courtesy. He said not only would he come, he'd record everything. Never underestimate the power of theater when you play it in front of witnesses, he said in his raspy voice. And I smiled knowing he understood exactly what kind of performance we were headed into. I spent the rest of the morning sorting papers, checking the camera, making sure the video of Monica with the blue bottle was still intact. I saved it in the cloud, on the flash drive, and in my head. I'd become a woman of backups, because at this point forgetfulness was a luxury I couldn't afford. Julia came by mid-afternoon with fresh bread and a new piece of gossip. The lady on the 3rd floor told me she saw Monica with a man walking into the building yesterday, a well-dressed guy with a briefcase, she said, and I thought immediately of Lawson, the soft-handed lawyer. I said nothing, just poured myself tea. Sometimes silence is the sharpest answer. By evening, Monica appeared unannounced as usual, with a tight smile and jittery energy that filled the flat with noise. "Evelyn, I just came to confirm they'll pick you up tomorrow for the visit to Greenwood Manor. You don't have to worry about anything. You'll love it." I didn't know I'd agreed to go, I said, setting my cup down. "Well, I thought you wouldn't mind. It's just a little outing. Meet people your age. See the place. You don't have to decide anything yet." "I don't mind," I replied calmly. "But I won't be alone tomorrow. I'm bringing company." "Company?" "Yes, my lawyer. He says at my age it's best to have witnesses around, just in case." I watched the color drain from her face again. She took a second to recover. "Evelyn, that's not necessary. You're taking this as if it were some kind of trial." "Don't worry, Monica. I'm not the one who's going to feel like I'm on the stand." She said nothing else. She left quickly, her body tense, and her voice cracked. When the door shut behind her, the air seemed lighter, like the flat itself had exhaled. Ethan came downstairs and watched me in silence. "Are you really going?" he asked. "Of course. If they want me to see the set, I'll inspect it up close. And if they try something, then they'll fall in with me and won't know what hit them." That night, before sleeping, I reread my notes and stopped at one word I'd written, without thinking: patience. That was exactly what had given me back my power, waiting not out of resignation, but out of strategy. Revenge has a bad reputation, but really it's just an elegant synonym for balance. Friday dawned with white sun and a breeze that smelled like a beginning. I dressed simply, my gray coat, black purse, and the flash drive in the inside pocket. Edward was waiting on the corner, walking slowly, voice low. We got in the car Monica had sent. The driver, a young man in the care home's uniform, greeted us with mechanical politeness. On the way, Edward talked about nothing, weather, traffic, but we both knew the real conversation would start when we arrived. Greenwood Manor was a new, bright building, the kind designed to reassure people who no longer have options. At the entrance, we were greeted by a large man with a rehearsed smile, the famous Fletcher. He offered us coffee, walked us through white corridors, rooms that smelled of disinfectant and nostalgia. Monica arrived a few minutes later, impeccable, talking too fast. Mark stayed quiet, watching like someone who can't quite follow the plot. Fletcher took us into an office and, with a nearly theatrical gesture, pulled some papers from a folder. "Just a formality, Mrs. Evelyn," he said. "To record your visit and your consent, in case you'd like to reserve a place. Edward took the documents from his hands with the elegance of someone who's spent a lifetime dismantling traps. I'm afraid my client doesn't sign anything without reading, and certainly not without understanding every line. Monica tried to butt in, but Edward raised a hand. And by the way, he added, we're recording this meeting, for transparency. Fletcher's face changed color. So did Monica's. Mark swallowed hard. Nobody spoke for a long minute. I looked at them one by one, slowly, savoring the silence. Isn't it funny? I said finally. So much concern for my well-being, and no one thinks to ask what I want. Edward closed the folder, offered me his arm, and we walked out without signing a thing. On the way back, none of the three in the car, Monica, Mark, or even the driver, said a word. Only the sound of the tires and my steady breathing. When I got home, Ethan was waiting at the door. How did it go? Like a badly written play with a good ending, I said, hanging up my coat, though it's not over yet. Later, Julia came up with a brown envelope. Inside was a copy of the complaint Edward had filed that very morning, including the video of the bottle and the medical reports. Precautionary measures, the heading said. I sat down, read it slowly, and laughed inwardly. It wasn't joy. It was pure relief. That night the flat finally breathed easy. Ethan slept. Julia listened to the radio next door. Edward was probably drafting more paperwork. For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of my life in balance, and as the clock ticked toward midnight, I thought that justice, when it arrives late, doesn't always come dressed as judges. Sometimes it shows up as a stubborn old woman who refuses to be erased. Saturday dawned with a different silence, not the everyday kind, but the one that comes before something that changes the air in a house. I made coffee slowly, watching the steam rise, as if time itself needed a breath before moving on. Ethan came down soon after, barefoot, hair messy, half asleep, and sat in front of me without speaking. He didn't need to. There was something in his eyes saying he finally understood everything, that innocence was no longer a refuge but a burden. They called last night, he said at last, voice low. Mom was yelling. She got a summons from court. Perfect, I answered. Sometimes justice is late because it gets dressed slowly. She says she'll deny everything, that it's all lies, that you're sick. Then she'd better pick a good costume, because what's coming won't wash off with makeup. We spent the morning calmly. Julia came up with her portable coffee machine and 3 cups because, as she said, big days aren't faced with instant coffee. While she poured, she told me the whole neighborhood was talking about what happened at Greenwood Manor, that someone she didn't say who, though we all knew, had leaked details of the office scene. They say Monica lost it when she saw the camera, Julia added, amused. That poor Fletcher wanted to crawl under the table. I'm not surprised, I replied. People who live on appearances never know what to do when someone turns the lights on. The phone rang right after. It was Dr. Harper. She asked me to come in. She had the final medication report and, as she said, something else to tell me. I went alone. At the clinic, she took me into her office, blinds drawn and a tense expression. Evelyn, I have confirmation, she said, showing me the paper. Your pills contained an anxiolytic mixed with a hospital-use sedative. Low doses, but constant. How long could I have gone on like that without noticing? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Weeks, maybe months. Long enough for anyone to start doubting their sanity. I nodded, unsurprised. Can you sign that report and send it to the court? I already did. And there's something else you should know. You're not alone in this. We've seen this pattern far too often here, but very few people have your courage to face it. I thanked her and left with the feeling that the ground beneath my feet was finally falling into place. Outside, the midday light was clean, and the wind carried the smell of freshly baked bread that took me back to my early years in this flat, when life was still a simple promise. Back home, I found Ethan and Mark in the living room. The boy was tense, the father devastated. Mom, Mark said, voice broken. Monica's gone. She took things from the flat, the car, everything. She always was quick to run when the truth caught up with her. He sat down across from me, drained. I don't know how we got here. By not looking in time, I told him. By thinking love excuses you from seeing what you don't want to see. He nodded, covering his face with his hands. Ethan watched him silently. Dad, he said, it's not all lost. And he was right. Because that same afternoon, the phone rang, and Edward, with his always tired but steady voice, confirmed the judge had admitted the complaint, ordered restraining measures, and dismissed any attempt to have me declared incompetent. You won the first battle, Evelyn, he said. And I won't lie. You handled it better than many of my younger clients. That night, for the first time in weeks, the house felt like a home again. Julia brought a bottle of wine. Mark cooked badly, but with effort, and Ethan put on old music, the kind that sounds like someone's playing it from another time. We toasted without grand speeches, just looking at each other with the shared exhaustion and relief of people who've survived a domestic shipwreck. So, what now? Julia asked, laughing. What are you going to do with all this silence, Evelyn? Listen to it, I said. Sometimes silence is the only thing that tells you the truth. When they all left and the house was quiet again, I sat by the open window, watching the neighborhood lights flicker on one by one. I felt the clean air coming in and thought that, after all this, I hadn't just won a fight, but something deeper, the chance to keep owning my own footsteps. I looked at the blue bottle on the table. I'd kept it, not out of fear, but as a reminder. I turned it in my fingers and laughed softly. The irony that poison had almost given me my life back didn't stop seeming perfect. Before closing my notebook, I wrote the last line without thinking too much, just letting to myself be carried by the honesty of the moment. There's no age limit to start not being afraid. And as I did, I felt something close to peace, not the kind prayers promise, but the kind you get from knowing that, in the end, even after the damage, you can go back to who you were, even if a little more tired, a little wiser, and definitely freer. That's it. For today, my war with the blue bottle. If you made it all the way to the end, you're already one of mine, one of those who can handle the truth without sugar. Now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments which part shook you the most, if you saw yourself reflected or recognized someone, because I love reading you and not feeling alone in all this. And if you want to keep listening to stories like this, subscribe and activate whatever needs activating, because I'll keep talking as long as I have a voice and a memory.